your lesson for 3-2, adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials. This lesson is going to be pretty short in comparison to some of the other ones that we've done because I just want to touch on a few key things about combining like terms whenever you have polynomials that have different variables. So our essential question is basically the same as the title: how do you add, subtract, and multiply polynomials? And again, we are not doing the explore and reason since it's crossed out. So first, to add or subtract polynomials, you want to use the commutative and associative properties to group together your like terms, and then you're going to combine like terms. You do not change the variables, but you do have to match them up so that you are combining variables that have the same letter and the same degree. So for part A, we have a plus sign here, so we can basically ignore the parentheses because we don't have to worry about distributing a negative or anything like that. So I'm going to line up and combine my cube terms. So I have 6x cubed plus 2x cubed, which is 8x cubed. I have my x squared terms. X squared minus 8x squared is minus 7x squared. I actually only have one term that has an x in it, so I would just carry the 4x down to the answer since there's nothing to combine with it. And then we have our constant terms. Negative 7 plus 3 is negative 4, and that's all there is to it. That's all there is to combining like terms when you have addition. Now with subtraction, there's going to be a little bit more to that because you do have to make sure that everything in the second polynomial is changed to its opposite. So I'm actually going to go through and recopy these. So I have 3x squared y squared plus 2xy squared plus 6x squared minus 2x squared y squared minus 3xy squared plus 2x squared. Notice everything in the second polynomial changed to its opposite sign. Now we want to go through and combine things that are exactly alike with their variables. That means x squared y squareds get combined, xy squareds get combined, and x squareds get combined. So you want to make sure that you are combining the appropriate things together. Don't change the variable. Variables only change when you're multiplying, but you will change the coefficient out in front. So 3x squared y squared minus 2x squared y squared is 1x squared y squared. 2xy squared minus 3xy squared is minus 1xy squared. Again, notice I did not change the variables. Then 6x squared plus 2x squared is a plus 8x squared. And that would be your final answer. So adding, subtracting, that's all there is to it. So multiplying is where you're actually going to be changing your variables because when you multiply two things together, you add their exponents. So that is something to consider whenever you do get to multiplication. So to multiply polynomials, you want to use the distributive property, and then you are going to group your like terms and combine. So in example 2, part A, I have a binomial times a trinomial. 2 terms is binomial, 3 terms is trinomial. I'm going to take the first term and multiply it by every term in the second polynomial. So the 2m times the 3m squared, I multiply the 2 and the 3 and get a 6. M times m to the second power, add exponents, we get m to the third power. 2m times a negative 4m, multiply the coefficients, add the exponents of the m, that's going to be a minus 8m squared. 2m times 2, multiply the 2's together. There is no m to combine exponents or to add exponents with, so I'm just going to carry down that 4m. Now I do the same thing, but with the 5. So I do the 5 times the 3m squared, the 5 times the negative 4m, and the 5 times the 2. 5 times the 3m squared is going to be a 15m squared. Again, there's no m with that, so the m squared is just going to carry down, but I do multiply the 5 and the 3. 5 times negative 4m is negative 20m. 5 times 2 is 10. Now we go through and look for like terms. There's only one term that has an m cubed in it, so I'm going to carry the 6m cubed down to my answer. I have a negative 8m squared and a 15m squared. That's going to be a positive 7m squared. 4m minus 20m is minus 16m. And then the only constant term that I have is the 10 at the end. And that would be my solution whenever I multiply. So that's part A. Part B, and this will actually be the last example that we look at with this section. Part B has 3 different binomials that we're multiplying together. I don't suggest trying to multiply all 3 together in one go. What you should do is pick out 2 of them to multiply together, keep the third one off to the side, and then once you multiply the 2, take that result and multiply by the remaining one. So I'm going to carry down this mn plus 1. I'm not going to deal with that yet, but I am going to multiply together the mn minus 2 and the mn minus or plus 4. So I'm going to multiply the mn's and then the mn by 4. Mn times mn is m squared n squared. So each of those has an exponent of 1, so you would add the exponents of the m's, add the exponents of the n's, you end up with m squared n squared. Then the mn times 4 is a plus 4mn. Do the same thing with the negative 2. So that's going to be negative 2mn, and then the negative 2 times the 4 is minus 8. Combining like terms, the only 2 things that are alike are the middle mn's. This m squared is not alike because its exponents don't match the exponents of the terms in the middle. So I'm going to carry the m squared n squared down. Combine these 2 together, you get plus 2mn, and then carry down the minus 8. Now we can go through and multiply like we did in part A. So we are going to be multiplying the mn by all 3 terms, and then we're going to go through and multiply the 1 by all 3 terms. Mn times m squared n squared is m cubed n cubed. Mn times 2mn is plus 2 m squared n squared. Mn times 8 is negative 8 mn. 1 times m squared n squared is plus m squared n squared. 1 times 2mn is plus 2mn. You want to be very careful with your variables here because it's very easy to make a mistake. 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. Combine like terms, I only have 1 term that has the cubes in it, 2 m squared n squared, and 1 m squared n squared is plus 3 m squared n squared. Negative 8mn plus 2mn is minus 6mn, and then I would carry down the minus 8 as it's the only constant term. And that's multiplying polynomials. That's all we're going to look at for 3-2. Again, I said it was a very short section. That's the bulk of what I want you to take away from this. You may see a few other notes if you look at the PDF as far as like closed under addition and things like that. I'm not really concerned about that at this time, as long as we can add, subtract, multiply. And actually, division is going to be its own section. We'll probably be looking at that later on. But add, subtract, multiply, as long as you can do that, then that's what I want you to take away from this section. Go back through and rewatch the video. If anything is confusing or doesn't make sense, feel free to reach out to me with any questions.